Hello gainers, I'm Ralphie and welcome to my channel called Fitter Philosophy, in which, as an older person, I take the opportunity to talk about some practical experience-based stoic stuff that's going a little bit beyond just academic philosophy. It's kind of weaving the thoughtful into the practical, into the daily experience of our lives. It's a very useful thing to do. And I want to tell you a story. And it's based in the fact that one of the important things in life is observation. The more we use our senses, all of our senses, the more we engage and we connect with life. The more we do that, the more we see the way things are, rather than the internal kind of relatively bland monologue that we have when we see things as they think they are, not as they really are. And one of these situations that, with a little bit of practice, you'll soon get the hang of it, is people watching. And you'll find that the more you're walking down a street and you just stop in a doorway, or you just start to just slow down slightly and really look at people as they pass. And the more you do this, the more you start to be able to read people, to see the person inside beyond the outward facade. It's an acquired skill. One doesn't have to be particularly intellectual about it to have this. In fact, one of the real strengths is just instinctive awareness of other humans. And you start to get a window into their lives. And so many people around us, particularly in the Western world, which is relatively well off, lead lazy lives. And they lead lives as consumers. But the problem with that is that it's not really your life. It's a life that's been imposed on you by the constant surrounding white noise of peer group pressure, social expectations, mixed medias, legacy media, social media, all the medias. And the illusions that we often create for ourselves to make our lives easier and more convenient. Convenience can be an absolute killer. And I want to introduce an individual to you that I write about him in one of my books, Life, Death and Whiskey by Ralphie. That's me. And you'll find it on Amazon. And this is basically, it's based on my career as an undertaker in Glasgow for over 20 years. And it's the things that really I've observed and then translated into the book. And one of the characters that I mention and discuss in chapter 9, I think it is, I'm sure it's chapter 9. Yes, it's chapter 9, is Seafarer Tom. It's strange that when we go through life, we can meet people a lot of times, and yet they don't leave much of an impression on us. In other words, we don't come back and think about them after we've met them, dozens, if not hundreds of times. Their impact in our lives is basically relatively meaningless. And that goes for a lot of people. But we can meet a person once in our lives for no more than a couple of hours. And we never forget these individuals, because of the authenticity of their circumstances and the originality of their story. And then as you're discussing and learning about these people, you see why they are the shape that they are. You see the life that they've lived reflecting in what they emanate out into the world. And Seafarer Tom is a classic example of this. I only met him once, and it was to pre-arrange his funeral because he had no immediate family. He was brought up in a suburb of Glasgow called Govan, and it was at a time in the 1940s, 50s of considerable poverty for the majority of people. And families were large. He lost his father to alcohol at a relatively young age, and his mother was left to bring up 8 children on her own. And in those days, the community would rally round, but essentially you were very much on your own. His mother coped as best she could because money was very limited. In fact, they were really very poor indeed. There was times they'd skip meals. And I mean, he's telling me this, before I made his arrangements. One of the great skills is to, not so much what you say, but how you listen. And he wanted to talk. So he told me that when he was 14, he just basically agreed with his mum that he'd leave home, find some work and send us some money as soon as he could. She agreed. He went out the front door, literally with a canvas bag in his hand, went down to the dockside and started wandering up and down where the berthed ships were on the River Clyde, until he saw one that he just had a good feeling about. So he went onto the ship and he got knocked back. He said, no. We don't need anybody. Get off the ship now. So he just immediately got off the ship, wandered down, and he saw another ship, a smaller ship, that he just, purely by circumstances, although the vibe that he had about it wasn't so positive, he went on that ship, said, I'll just work my passage. You can pay me what you want to pay me if you feed me, and I'll make myself useful. And they said yes. It wasn't even the captain's decision, it was one of the senior officers that happened to be on duty, just said yes. So that's when Tom, at the age of 14, became a seafarer, a deckhand. And he was a grafter. That's the thing. He had a good wit to him. He was a grafter. He was a good observationalist. He knew how to fit in. He knew how to not ruffle feathers, because he came from a dirt poor background, and that's how you survive. And he applied it on the ship. At this point, as you can imagine, on his own, a 14-year-old kid, nowadays with modern references, we struggle to kind of see just how vulnerable, and essentially he was. But that was normal in those days. And over the years, he went all around the world. He worked from ship to ship. He got up to senior, junior officer status. He learned everything that he possibly could. He applied himself and worked hard. He sent money back to his mother, which made a huge difference because she could bring up the rest of the family without them having to leave the home. And he just got used to it. It became his world. He didn't want to go back once he had his qualifications and once he had his experience. He just stayed afloat. And he went all around the world. He found love in Barbados and lost his love in Barbuda, Hong Kong, Shanghai, Frankfurt. He literally sailed the globe from Anchorage to Andorra, and he never looked back. When I was sitting discussing, because at the point when I met him, he was now a lecturer at the Nautical College and a consultant. And because of his seafaring background. He'd never acquired many possessions. He never needed them because they were more than compensated for the richness and the texture of the experience in his life, from the calmest of oceans to the most horrendous of sea storms. He'd seen it and lived it all. And he remained a humble, inspiring, wonderful human. You could just see, I mean, yeah, we have experience in life where we can suss people out after a few minutes. And he was an absolute inspiration. Everything he had in life, he made for himself. And I write about him in this book because he's gone now. His ashes were basically scattered into the River Clyde because he wanted to finish where he started his life for real. So it was a very fitting tribute. He had many friends, and his students adored him at the college. And he lived a very full and remarkable life. He lived into his 80s, right into his 80s. And although it was tough for him in many ways, there was also a richness and a satisfaction evident in his life that's missing for many people today, because unfortunately for many people life is relatively meaningless when they're too connected to the physical stuff. And that's Seafarer Tom. Thank you for watching. I hope you found this engaging. I'm not going to go on too long about it, but I would conclude by saying is be on the lookout, because when we encounter genuinely interesting, inspirational people, they give off an energy, and all we have to do is absorb some of that energy, and we enrich our lives, and that's the way it goes. Bye.